Let's look at this set. In a city, there are 10 police patrolling jeeps for providing security to the residents. Each patrolling jeep, where are you? Each patrolling jeep has 3 policemen. That is namely one inspector, one constable, and one driver. So every jeep, 1 minute, every jeep has one inspector, one constable, and one driver. Okay. Each patrolling jeep has a wireless system to make calls to other patrolling jeeps. Codes are required to activate the wireless system, which are different for inspectors, constables, and drivers. 4 patrolling jeeps receive every call made from an inspector. Okay. So 4 patrolling jeeps receive every call made by an inspector, and therefore, can I say every call made by an inspector will go out to 4 jeeps? Every call made by an inspector will go out to 4 jeeps. Similarly, 2 patrolling jeeps receive every call made by a constable, or every call made by a constable will go out to 2 jeeps. And 1 patrolling jeep receives every call made by a driver, or every call made by a driver will go out to 1 patrolling jeep. Okay. The patrolling jeeps can make or receive calls to or from other patrolling jeeps only. The following table provides information about the number of received and dialed calls by each patrolling jeep at the end of a particular day. Okay. Number of received calls. Let's add these up. 5, 7, 9, 21, 21, 10, 31, 31, 8, 39, 39, 6, 45, 45, 9, 54, 54 plus 7 is 61, 61 plus 6 is 67, 67 plus 15 is 82. 82 calls have been received. And dialed calls 5, 3, 2, 10, 10, 17, 20, 20 plus 30. Okay, so 30 calls. 30 calls have been dialed and 82 calls have been received. And that is on account of every call from an inspector goes to 4 jeeps, every call from a constable goes to 2 jeeps, and every call from a driver goes to 1 jeep. Sometimes may say, let the number of calls made by an inspector be X, number of calls made by a constable be Y, number of calls made by a driver be Z. In terms of calls dialed, I would have X plus Y plus Z is equal to 30. And in terms of calls received, it would be 4x plus 2y plus z is equal to 82. Altogether, I will get 3x plus y is equal to 52. Okay. Now, with this in mind, I can come up with possible solution sets x, y, and z. Can come up with possible solution sets. The first solution set would be this is 17, this is 1, this is 12. The next case would be x comes down by 1, y goes up by 3. So this becomes 4, this becomes 10. Next case would be 15, 7, and 8, 14, 10, and 6, 13, 13, and 4, 12, 16, and 2. And the final case will be 11, 19, and 0. Utilizing 3x plus y, we can come up with these many cases. These 7 cases are possible. Number of calls made by inspectors could be 17 or 16 or 15 or 14 or 13 or 12 or 11. Okay, we have all this information. Multiple cases are possible. Let's go and look at the individual questions. First question, if police patrolling jeep number 2, which had received 15 calls and had dialed 3 calls, had received calls from only 3 police patrolling jeeps. Only 3 police patrolling jeeps. So if it received calls from only 3 police patrolling jeeps, 15 calls have to be received from 3 police patrolling jeeps. It can only come from 2, which has 15 calls, would have received calls from, let's look at the 3 highest numbers, 5, 6, and 4. It would have received calls from Jeep 1, Jeep 4, and Jeep 9. 4 calls from here, 6 calls from here, and 5 calls from here. Police patrolling Jeep 2 would have received calls from Jeep 1, Jeep 4, and Jeep 9, 5, 6, and 4. This is done. Then what could be the lowest number of police patrolling jeeps from which police patrolling jeep 7 received calls? Okay. Now police patrolling jeep 7 received 10 calls. Now these 10 I want it to come from as few police patrolling jeeps as possible. The best way to accomplish that would be, let it receive calls from 4 and let it receive calls from police jeep 4 and police jeep 9. 6 calls go out here, 4 calls go out here. Why we are able to pull this off is, remember the inspectors and the constables, their calls go out to multiple jeeps. So if all the calls that were received here by police patrol G2 were all from inspectors, these inspectors, these 5 calls that have gone out, 6 calls that have gone out, 4 calls that have gone out, they can go to multiple jeeps. So they may have gone to 2 also, they may have gone to 7 also, and then we can accomplish this target of police patrol jeep 7 receiving calls only from 2 other patrol jeeps. So the minimum number, lowest possible number of police patrolling jeeps from which police patrolling jeep 7 received calls, the answer would be 2. Next question, what could be the maximum number of calls that could be made by the constables? Constables is y. Maximum possible value of y is in this case 11, 19, and 0. So maximum possible number of calls will be 90. Next case, if the total number of calls made by all the inspectors was not less than the total number of calls made by all the constables. So x has to be greater than equal to y. And the total number of calls made by all the constables was not less than the total number of calls made by the drivers. So this has to be greater than equal to z also. Then what is the minimum number of calls that could have been made by the drivers? X has to be greater than equal to y, has to be greater than equal to z. Okay. So hopefully you can see the only 2 cases that satisfy these conditions. X is greater than equal to y is greater than equal to z. Are these two 14, 10, 6 and 13, 13, 4? So if I'm looking for minimum number of calls made by the drivers, minimum value of z, the answer to the question will be 4. Next question, if the total number of calls made by all the inspectors was not less than the total number of calls made by all the constables, this is another way of saying x is greater than equal to y, and the total number of calls made by all the constables was not less than total number of calls made by all the drivers. So we are back in the same territory. X is greater than equal to y is greater than equal to z. Then what was the maximum number of calls that could have been made by the drivers? Now we are looking for the maximum possible value for z. There are only these 2 acceptable cases. So maximum possible number of calls made by drivers will be 6. And that is the entirety of this set. The beauty of this set is that if you read it with a cursory glance, you'll realize that there are lots of things that can potentially be asked. But because these subparts are so straightforward, the working required for this is very, very limited, and you can perhaps accomplish this in less than 10 minutes. That will be all for this.